So, Saitama, the Keep Baldy, probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest hero out there.
But can he beat Goku though?
Nah. We're not gonna be talking about that. Nope, I ain't going down the rabbit hole, nah. But still though, Saitama is pretty strong. Just for comparison, in chapter 164 and 165, Saitama, after witnessing Genos' death, fights Garou with the enhanced powers that God gave to him. And as they start their fight, Saitama unleashes a serious punch, which then Garou countered by him going into Saitama mode. And as a result of their fists clashing, lots and lots of galaxies and stars got destroyed as just a mere recoil of the force of their fists clashing. Yeah, he's that strong. But today we are not going to be talking about why Saitama is that strong. Nope, today we're going to be talking about on why Saitama is such a unique character that at first glance you may mistake him for a simple, overpowered, comedic, one-dimensional protagonist. In other words, we're going to be talking about why Saitama is a great reverse protagonist. And so, let's start the video. So before I start to ramble on about how great Saitama is, first of all, you may wonder from the title of this video on what is a reverse protagonist. And so, a reverse protagonist is a protagonist, which in this case is Saitama, that at the beginning of the story, the protagonist is already at the end of his hero's journey. Basically, it's like if we start Naruto when he's the Hokage instead of his 12-year-old self. Now, with that out of the way, let's ask the question, what makes Saitama a reverse protagonist? Well, it's not just only because he's already at the end of his hero's journey, but the fact that he's at the end of his hero's journey and yet still in the beginning of his story. Cause you have characters like Naruto or Ichigo where at the end of their journey, they have accepted for who they are, with Naruto accepting Kurama and Ichigo acknowledging his Soul Reaper, Quincy, Hollow, and Fullbringer lineage, and discovering himself in the process. But with Saitama, instead of discovering himself or having a character development pushing his character forward, he actually went backwards, cause before he got his overwhelming strength, he actually has emotions instead of just, well, this. Like, even though now Saitama has reached his goal of just beating his villains with just a single punch, to achieve that, he not only had to sacrifice his hair, he also had to sacrifice his humanity. Now, before we go any further, let's switch topic for a bit to Saitama's backstory, so that you'll have a better understanding of the character. So, Saitama. Before he got his overwhelming strength, he was just your typical average unemployed dude, until one day when he meets Mr. Krabs that was supposed to squish this little kid. At first, Saitama contemplates whether or not he should help the kid or not, but as he sees the kid about to get squished, he instinctively jumps in and saves him. And after he defeats Mr. Crab by wrapping his tie around his eye then pulling it out, Saitama decided that he's gonna be a hero, but not just any hero, the most powerful one. And so he trains his body to the limits with 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run every single day for 3 years straight. And the results speak for themselves. He could just one-shot every enemy that he's facing with now, but even though he has achieved his goal, where he should feel happy, he feels empty. And that is because he went through all those sacrifices, all those struggles, all alone. And so he achieves it alone. Unlike most other protagonists where throughout their journey gain new friends, Saitama gained none, until he meets Genos. Now, Genos first met Saitama when he was fighting this mosquito lady that causes trouble by sucking people off their blood. But as the fight continues, Genos was getting beaten by this mosquito lady, and so in typical Saitama fashion, he slaps the lady into a building, defeating her. And when Genos saw Saitama's enormous strength, he immediately asked Saitama to be his student, and Saitama just said yes without really thinking about it. And from then on, there is student and sensei. At first, Saitama sees Genos as just an annoyance, but as time passes by, he sees Genos not only as a student, but also as a friend. But Saitama didn't realize it at first. He didn't realize that Genos is unintentionally pulling out his humanity back out, whether it's through excessively complimenting Saitama or excessively taking notes of Saitama's words and behavior. But nonetheless, Genos basically looks up to Saitama, and it was on full display on episode 7 after Saitama broke a meteor that was about to fall on the city, where pieces of it hit the city and caused lots of damage. And of course, Saitama got blamed for it all. Now, Saitama was in the middle of a tantrum when Genos said that that's enough, and as they were walking away, Genos said this to Saitama.
俺は埼玉先生ほど優れた人間を見たことがありません。たとえ世間に評価されなくても、俺は先生についていきます。
そういうのいらねえから別に。
And even though Saitama just brushed it off at the end, deep down he really appreciated that. Now, another thing I want to talk about is that how simple Saitama's motivations are. In a world where characters' goals are striving for greatness, Saitama's motivation is just to find a foe that can reignite his excitement for fighting. This simple yet meaningful motivation is what makes Saitama stand out from the rest. And not only that, while Saitama might be physically unmatched, he faces a unique struggle. While other protagonists face the struggle of overcoming their foes, Saitama faces with the struggle of boredom. With the lack of challenging opponents, Saitama in his everyday routine finds world-ending monsters as just on a Tuesday. And also that's why Genos and Saitama complete each other, with Genos finding the mentorship that Saitama provides to keep him from being fully the vengeful cyborg, and Saitama finding friendship and comfort in Genos, even if Saitama doesn't want to admit it. But it's not only Genos that Saitama finds friendship and comfort in, he also found King, the supposed strongest man. Sounds like a pretty good matchup where Saitama could get his humanity back through getting beaten, right? Nope, turns out King isn't the strongest, in fact he's probably the weakest. And also fun fact, turns out King's achievements to becoming an S rank was actually Saitama's. He just happened to pass by whenever Saitama dealt with the monsters. Now you would think that Saitama would get pretty mad and angry by this, but he actually didn't. He just tells King that he's a hero in the people's eyes, and so you either take the easy way out by quitting, or you actually be strong. And that's how they became friends. Now, Saitama and King would regularly play video games together, and one day King notices that Saitama looks a bit down, and so King asks him what's up. And Saitama replies with that, even though he has defeated many strong monsters, deep down he's bored out of his mind. And King replies with, isn't it great to be strong? And Saitama replies with that he has become too strong and has no more room for growth. But King then counters with that a true hero don't seek out satisfaction from fighting, but instead a true hero fights with courage and benefiting society. That's what a true hero aims to be. And Saitama is far from that, and so to say that you have no more room to grow now sounds a bit shallow and arrogant. And Saitama completely agrees. And now before I forget, let's talk about Garou. Specifically how Garou is pretty much almost like Saitama, but at the beginning of his journey. In the beginning, Saitama wants to be strong in order to protect people from monsters with a single punch, but with Garou, he wants to be the strongest because he sees heroes as hypocritical, biased, and oppress the weak. Because you see, Garou grew up with the ideology of that villains aren't exactly villains, but just normal people with good intentions. And just because a hero stops them doesn't mean that they automatically becomes a villain. And through his mask of toughness and ruthless actions against the heroes, behind all that, he's just a lonely guy. He has no friends, he was the loser of his school because of the simple fact that the popular kid said so. The same popular kid who everyone looks up to, similarly like a hero would. And so this would serve as one of the seeds of hatred for Garou against the heroes and what would eventually shape this ideology. And so, in conclusion, Saitama is not only a great protagonist, but also a great character. I mean, where else are we gonna get a protagonist that is as overpowered as Saitama, but still is facing our everyday problems like rent, boredom, groceries, and so on and so on. But yeah, the story of One Punch Man is definitely a unique one, with it being essentially just Saitama trying to gain his humanity back. And that is pretty much it for the video. Congratulations for making it through till the end, and as always, thanks for watching, and see you.